Great. How many people here have some cryptocurrency? Woohoo! Wow, that's like 70%. And how many people are planning an ICO? We're planning our ICO. About 10. Pretty good. All right, we're going to get into the details of ICOs and tokens. And first, we're going to start with where we are today, and then I'll talk about where we're going. We will start with a magic trick. Pay attention. In this magic trick, I'm going to take two separate ledgers. Anytime money changes hands, we account for that on our own ledger. So in my company, we write it down on our ledger, then we send you an invoice, and then you get it and you put it on your ledger. Or if I send you money, if I send you 100 euros by bank wire, you don't get that money. You get an IOU that's good until the end of the day. At night, all the banks net out the differences and reconcile their separate ledgers. In fact, $1 at Morgan Stanley is different from $1 at Bank of America or Barclays. These are different things because they're on separate ledgers. They actually have different characteristics. And when you do business, you have to when you have to figure out your taxes, you figure out what you owe, the government figures it out, and you have to reconcile. And that accounts for about $2 trillion of waste in our world economy. And so the magic trick is that we share a ledger. This is an amazing magic trick. What happens then is the sale closes the trade. The books are done. You don't reconcile at the end of the month and do the books. They're always kept up to date. Your taxes would always be paid at all times. Whole accounting departments are not necessary. And that's what's being done on many blockchains around the world. This is a map of the nodes on the Ethereum blockchain. Right now, there are 16,000 computers. You can put your computer on this network and run a node on the Ethereum network. This is by far the largest blockchain, and every single one of these computers has a copy of every transaction since day one. And so I want you all to use the same definition of a blockchain, because people got on stage and I've seen everything. I have seen diagrams and white papers and lots of complicated stuff, but this is it. A blockchain is a shared ledger that everyone trusts to be accurate forever. Notice I am not talking about blocks and chains. The blocks and chains are silly. They don't matter. Yes, it's nice that we're using them, but in 10 years we probably won't. What matters is that it's a shared ledger that everyone trusts. Even people who don't trust each other still trust this ledger to be accurate forever. It can't be attacked. 100% of the top 500, the Fortune 500 companies, the biggest companies in the world, have been successfully hacked. 100%. Every single one has been successful. And that's all the banks you can name have been successfully hacked. The blockchain has never been hacked. Zero. So what can you do with a blockchain? You can only do 4 things. You can store value, you can exchange value, you can store permanent records forever, and you can program what's on the blockchain. And that programmability is a second magic trick added to the shared ledger. So if you think about a shared programmable ledger, the implications are amazing. It doesn't transform finance, it transforms the world. And this is what we're going to talk about today. So first, you've heard a lot about tokens, and I want to be clear what tokens are because I think people confuse these terms. A coin is a general purpose unit of value in a particular system, in a system of belief. This right here is a unit of value in a belief system. It's not good for anything unless people believe it's good for something. but it's very general purpose. A token, on the other hand, is a special purpose unit of value. For example, yesterday I got on board an airplane and I used a QR code to get on the airplane one time. That's a token, okay? Your gym membership could potentially be a token, or getting your ability to come into this conference or showing that you've paid. That's a token. It's generally a specific use. It's a specific unit of value. It could even represent a single diamond or a single gram of gold or perhaps a single piece of real estate, and it represents that value. Now, there's a lot of things in between, and I want you to think of tokens as poker chips. That's the best way to think of them. So when you go to a casino, you cash in your money, you get tokens, and those tokens are now good for several different games. So they're special purpose, but they can be used for, say, 10 or so games. But they don't work at the casino across the street, do they? There's no inter-casino lending platform for tokens. When you're done, when you pay your token, you spend it and you lose your money, which is what happens in Las Vegas or at any casino. You lose it, then the dealer doesn't want the tokens. The dealer wants cash, so he takes it back to the exchange, to the cashier, gets his money, and then the tokens circulate around again. And I may be giving, I'm not sure, I haven't had confirmation, but I may be giving a talk tomorrow specifically on tokens and token models. So a token is a special purpose unit of value in a system. Now, what's an ICO? Well, contrary to popular belief, ICO is not company finance. It's not startup finance. It's not venture capital. An ICO is project finance. You write a white paper, you tell people what you're going to do, and the only thing you can really do with that is do what you said. That's why people are buying your token. You don't get to pivot and be in some completely different business. It's also taxable. Some people may not know that. When you get your ICO money, you'll pay tax on that income. You've just sold a product. The sky is the limit, meaning there's no natural equilibrium between buyers and sellers of tokens. Once you're doing all the marketing and you've got your booth here and you're out there doing social networking and you've got lots of advisors to validate your team, then you might as well just sell as many tokens as you possibly can. There's nothing naturally limiting that. So you go for the sky and try to raise as much as you can. That's at odds with traditional venture capital and most early stage finance, which goes in stages. So venture, and I want to explain tokenomics quickly. In tokenomics, often it's open source software that is for a non-profit platform, as we have. We have a nonprofit foundation based in Switzerland. In tokenomics, you raise money at a certain valuation, and so the coins have a certain value, but you also retain some tokens. So typically you're going to sell about 60, 70% of the tokens, and you'll retain 30 or 40%. And then as those go up in value because of the network effect and the success of the system, we hope, then the tokens that you retain are also valuable and can be sold later. So the first stage of financing is the ICO. Second stages of financing are being able to cash out your now more valuable tokens as the system becomes more valuable. That's very different from a more income and profit-based model of a company. And so this is very different from an equity raise. First of all, when you raise equity, you sell stock. It's not taxable, and you don't want to give it all away. There's only 100%. So the first time you raise money, you need to raise enough to get to first base, enough to have a minimum viable product, enough to get some traction with customers, and then you're out of money. So, but you have traction and things are working, so then there are investors who want to give you money on top of your success. If it doesn't work, investors haven't lost too much. You can just start something else again. If it doesn't work and you've got some money left over, you pivot. Pivoting is not done in the ICO world. In startup world, pivoting is the norm. Almost all large, successful startups are not in the same business they started in. They pivot all the time. So when you give money to a team and you're an equity holder, you're asking them to go get traction and figure out what's the best use of the money, not to do what their business plan says. The business plan is always garbage. The business plan never matters. The business plan is just for raising money. But then you get engaged with the market and you learn things and you go whichever way the market takes you. And if you're lucky, you don't run out of money. If you're lucky, you get a bit of traction, and then you take the next round of funding in stages. And equity is a security. By definition, in almost all countries, equity is a security. That means it cannot be sold to the public. Initially, in general, if you're raising more than about $1 million, you have to do it through accredited investors. This is the law. So it's a completely different market, and yet I think this is what most companies really mean when they say we're having an ICO. They really mean we want to sell stock, and that aligns the interest of the investors and the projects. Too many projects are overfunded. Too many projects have $100 million, and that's for something with like no traction yet and just a white paper. That's way too much. It's not a good way to allocate capital. So this is how I think it's going to play out over the next couple of years, and this is what we're involved with at Pillar and my other company, 2030. That I think that 30% or so will be equity. 30% of tokens issued will be for equity. We're building an equity token platform, and we hope to build an equity token exchange. That's a stock market for little companies, for startups. That has never been done before. We're up against a lot of regulatory challenges, but we hope eventually to build just that, a regulated market for startup stock in the form of tokens. Also, if you have a hedge fund, I think some of the, about 10% or so, will be fund tokens. And right now, it's very hard. It's close to impossible to tokenize a fund. The law doesn't allow it yet. So we have a lot of work to do to tokenize crypto funds. And most crypto funds are operating, many are operating illegally if they sell you a token. Most of those tokens are not compliant with law. Then on the asset side, some will be securities, some will not be securities. Thank you. Some you can buy, a diamond. You don't need a license to buy a diamond, but you may need a license to buy a house, or you may need, it's going to be regulated if you buy a house, or other kinds of assets. If you buy various kinds of crypto assets will be regulated, and some won't. And then I think we're going to sell a lot of tickets. What's a ticket? A token, generally, what we think of a token is a fixed supply. It's a fixed number, which creates scarcity, and the price goes up and down according to supply and demand. Just like in the stock market, when you have a fixed number, the price goes up and down. But when in a ticket, you have a fixed price and you have an unlimited number. And we're starting to see smart contracts now that can generate tickets on demand. And if you look in your wallet and you look at most of the tokens in your wallet, you find a lot of things with little, barcodes and things that are scannable. And these are almost all tickets. Tickets for rides or gym memberships or effectively for government services. Many things are tickets. There are far more tickets than there are securities. So we are working on a platform for tickets, and you'll see more and more tickets, unlimited number, fixed price, coming out over the next years. And then finally, a small number of deals will be these utility tokens that we have today, and the ERC20 token will eventually be replaced by something much better. We're just in the early days exploring this token design space, and my goal and my hope is that only a small number of open source projects will have utility tokens. If your project is not open source, I would say you should not offer a utility token. Keep in mind that 90% or perhaps more of all tokens sold will eventually become worthless. So my message to buyers is broaden your exposure, reduce your exposure to any particular token, broaden your portfolio, increase the diversity of your holdings. Don't go all in on one magic token that's going to make you a ton of money. It very well, it has 90% chance to go to zero. So we're going to do a different distribution method, and some people in the United States, because we can't sell anything to Americans anymore, are going to airdrops. An airdrop is where you send free tokens to everybody and then you use it in the system and hope that the value goes up over time. But the minute you send them out, they're worth nothing. So you're not selling a security. It could turn into a security later. So people are exploring that, but I believe we'll have a lot of staged offerings where you might offer 10 or 20% of the tokens to people to raise $5, $6 million, get your first product out, and then as it becomes more value, stage it and have another sale. So this is a better way to allocate capital and also a better way to manage risk. And I think we'll see more and more staged offerings in the next few years. There are many kinds of economies that tokens create. This is kind of the main thing I want you to remember from this talk. We're now creating new economic games with economic incentives to replace today's traditional regulatory and rule books. We're using incentive games to create what one example is token curated registries. And a token curated registry is let's take an example. Fake news. Okay, there's plenty of fake news. There's been fake news forever. And you can have laws about fake news. You can have best practices, but still there's tons of it. And in a token curated registry, you would have people watching for fake news and betting their own money that this is not true. And if it turns out not to be true, the ones who are against it will win. And the ones who said, no, this is true, they will lose their money to the ones who've said, no, this is wrong. So you can imagine in science, for example, we could say, well, this coming experiment has a likelihood of going, being successful or not, and people can bet on those, and when you're right, you win, and when you're wrong, you lose. If you think about making lists of anything valuable, like lists of doctors, lists of good bloggers, lists of Nobel Prize economists who don't know anything. There's lots of lists that are valuable in the world, and those lists could be curated by people who have skin in the game. So with a token curated registry, you would say, I want our hotel, Booking.com is a good example. Hotels, ratings in general on Amazon, at least half of all ratings are fake, right? Booking.com, TripAdvisor, these are mostly fake. People are just gaming the system with fake ratings. There are companies who will just give you lots of ratings for a fee. So in a token curated registry, what you would do is you'd say, well, our hotel is a good hotel. We want to be on the list of the top 100 hotels in Amsterdam. And then people will take two sides of that bet. Some people will say, actually, no, that doesn't belong in the top 100, and this is why. And other people will say that it belongs. And they will fight it out using money. By who wins will be determined. The winners will determine, let me say it again. You're going to put some money, when you put your hotel on this list, you're going to put in money. You're going to put in, say, 20 euros and say, our hotel should be on this list. Now, the people who know a lot about travel, they will play this betting game. And if you end up in the list, then the ones who said yes will get the money, and the ones who said no will keep the money. You will lose the money. You're paying a fee to be listed or not, and the benefits go to the readers who don't have to pay anything. So this is a closed ecosystem at the center of which is a token, a single token that starts out with zero value. You can't use Ether for this. You can't use Bitcoin. It starts out with zero value, and the game itself creates winners and losers based on the outcome that the rules determine. So we're creating economic games that give us outcomes. For example, is a doctor a good doctor? Is a particular doctor a good doctor? Well, people could vote and say, well, I saw that doctor and I didn't think that doctor was very good for whatever, and here's my reasons. Other people can say, no, I saw that doctor, or actually I know about his academics, or I know about his scores, and those people will bet on whether that person is in a list or not, and that will determine who gets paid. So I'm going to show you a few examples of these token games. They're just starting to emerge now. Oops, sorry. There we go. So this is a market for data where there are data providers and data consumers, and whether the data is good or useful or not is determined by the value of a token. So you can submit your data to the market, and if the market accepts it, the people accepting it will be rewarded with your money. And if the people rejecting it say, no, this is no good, and they win, they will get the money. And this is a token curated registry for data called Ocean. This is Masari, which effectively is a reporting platform for reporting financial results. So the Edgar database is one that can be gamed. In the United States, we have databases for financial results in Europe. And in the Masari system, if you're gaming it, you'll lose. You'll work your way down the rankings, and the people who are incentivized to be watchdogs will find that you're not telling the truth, and you'll vote down, and the ones who are against you will win. But if the ones who say, no, these guys are good, they're telling the truth, this is true data, they will win and you will rise in this particular game. So you can see that this can replace regulation. Regulation is just rules enforced by a couple of people, and this is crowdsourced regulation. We don't need regulation for so many things if we have these kinds of token-based games. Here is one for news to try to eliminate fake news using market principles and market design, using the blockchain to enforce that. This is one for reputation. Studies have shown that when you have more stars in your reputation at eBay, the better your reputation, the more higher price you can command for selling the exact same product as someone who has a lower reputation. And this is a game of trust. And in this manner, we can create our own identities using the immutable, unchangeable blockchain. We can create our own identities without having to be given an identity by a government organization. We do this with what are called attestations and claims. You say, I claim I went to Stanford, and if people can prove that, then they'll get a little money to show that, and the people will say, nah, he never went to Stanford. They will lose their money. And in that way, you can build your own identity, digital identity, and it can't be hacked because the incentive is there for watchdogs and people to try to bring out the truth will replace regulators and their teams of investigators. Almost all licenses and regulations can be replaced by incentive games. I'd rather be on an airplane with a pilot whose phone can tell us how much he slept last night and what his performance has been over the last couple of months, and I'd rather have the crowd vote and tell me whether this pilot is potentially shouldn't fly today or should. I'd much rather have the crowd who's incentivized tell me that than his supervisor or someone who may have an incentive to put that person on the plane when maybe he shouldn't be there. So there will be many uses of trust games and reputation networks based on trust games. This is one for voting on the future value of things. So price discovery can be done with side bets, with an options market where you can bet on what will be the future price of something. And those people are much better than experts. Experts suck at this. Experts are terrible at figuring out what the future price of something could be. But people with PhDs in physics and data science and lots of tools and tons of data are better at finding these things, and those people will help set the prices in an economy where they have the incentive to do so. And this could be used to run our macroeconomy to help our central banks better discover what policies they should use to manage a money supply and affect money monetary policy that would stop the crazy recessions that central banks keep causing every 10 years. So there are many, many centrally run, expert-led processes that can be replaced by markets, the right incentive markets. I want to end with a quick view of employment. This is very relevant to what we're doing in the blockchain world. This is employment. Employment has been rising steadily for a long time, even though you can see periods here in which technology has intervened. We have had technology replace travel agents and bank tellers, and many, many other jobs have been already replaced by technology, and yet the jobs continue to rise. In fact, unemployment also is rising. How could that be? Because the population is growing and more people are entering the job market even as some leave. But this doesn't tell the real story. I'm now going to show you perhaps the most scary slide you will see for the next couple of months. This shows high, middle, and low income wages. This shows actually jobs. It's actually hours worked, technically. And what we've seen, and this is not over time, these are by country. What we've seen over and over and over in country after country is that the low-paying jobs are increasing. There's more of them and there's more money. The high-paying jobs are increasing. There's more of them and they're getting more money. What's wrong with this picture? The middle-paying jobs are being decimated at a rapidly accelerating pace. These are the jobs that software and robots can do. More and more middle-paying jobs where maybe you know something like you know the town, and so you were a good taxi driver until Uber came along and people can just use the app. They don't have to know anything about where they live. They just follow the directions on the app. More and more of these knowledge base like jobs are being taken by technology, and our shared programmable ledger is going to increase the pace of this. So if you think about it, on top we have the jobs that robots and AI can't do yet, and we have the jobs that robots and AI don't feel like doing yet. They're just not interested in those jobs at the moment. We're only making 250,000 robots a year in the world and selling them. We're not even close to where we will be in 10 years. In 10 years, everything will be different. What's happening is the middle will continue to be eaten away on the high end and the low end by robots and software, including the smart contracts, which means, and this is, I'm the only person in the world saying this, right now, or in the next 5 years, we will have peak white-collar worker for entire human history. We are just on the cusp of peak white-collar worker. Repetitive, human, cognitive work will be replaced by smart contracts, AI, and machines. So it's not that we're having fewer jobs. This will probably continue, but they will change. And as you can tell, you can probably imagine, most people who lose a middle-income paying job are not able to go up, are they? They can't go up. They can only go down. This is what we will see play out. There will be plenty of jobs, but this is what we will see play out over the next 10, 20 years. So, to recap, on a blockchain, you can store value, you can exchange value, you can store permanent records, and you can program all of that. That's why we have a fiat token here. That's why we're working on a fiat token, so you can program fiat money as well. And this turns out to be exactly the set of things you need to run a bank, or an insurance company, or an e-commerce platform. This is about all you need to run those things. All they have an advantage is in the licenses. That's about the only value that insurance companies and banks will have. It won't be in customer service because everything will be taken care of the same way that we find a flight now. We don't need a travel agent anymore. So these are some of the newer blockchains that have this programmable capability. We only have a $450 billion industry here. We're tiny. We are nothing. We are not really on the radar of most large institutions. But when we get over $1 trillion, they're going to wake up. And that could easily be in the next 2 years. So this is a place you may want to put down a footprint and to make some effort, is in programming token incentivized games that replace whole layers of inefficiency in today's economy. I won't tell you about the amazing Pillar wallet because this is not a marketing speech, but I will tell you that I teach about tokens, and I'll have a token camp coming up in July in Lithuania. If you're interested in tokens that are ICOs, please come to Pillar and talk to us. Listen, this magic trick of sharing a ledger and making it programmable is going to change the way we do science. It's going to change the way we do healthcare. It will change politics. It will change education. It will change how art collectors collect art. It will change the way we do philanthropy. The things we're doing now with this blockchain stuff is going to change everything. We, the people in this room, we are going to change everything. So let's get started. Thank you.